Lewis, do you know how many people just love you on social media? People are huge fans of yours. They love every time you have something to say.
Oh yeah, I had a couple of memes ready for, after this fight, so be prepared for them to come tomorrow morning.
Derrick Lewis has long been a fan favorite due to his ability to perform a one-punch execution at any moment in a fight, and of course due to his charm and sense of humor.
What did you think of his last performance?
I haven't seen it because I didn't want to buy his pay-per-view. I didn't want to give him no money out of my pockets, Fuck Francis.
But we rarely ever think of him as a potential champion. This is in spite of the fact that he is about to fight for a UFC title for the second time in his career. He's been around for a while, and he's fought more or less everyone, winning more often than not. We love watching him fight, and he's clearly good at it, so why don't we take him more seriously? We don't take him seriously because we get caught up in what Lewis himself says about MMA. Lewis says he doesn't respect the sport, that he doesn't take it too seriously, that he's just here to make some money and support his family.
My coach, my manager, my wife, they all locked me in a room, told me I couldn't leave until I started saying that the title matter because it means more money. So yes, the title matter, man. That's all I'm about now. Let's get it.
And we just take his words at face value. But does it even make sense? I mean, he's surely not lying. He absolutely sees fighting as a job first and foremost. But there's more to it than that. If he was truly indifferent to the sport, he wouldn't have called for a rematch with Roy Nelson right after beating him.
I really would like a rematch with him real soon.
A rematch even though you won?
Yes.
Nor would he have expressed disappointment in his performance after beating Shamil Abdurakhimov.
I expected a better performance, so I'm disappointed in that.
Derrick Lewis is in perhaps the 99th percentile of UFC fighters in terms of career accolades. Is it possible to accomplish what he's accomplished without taking the sport seriously? If we say no, it kind of feeds into what much of the general populace thinks about MMA, that it's not really a sport and doesn't require real skill. But we know better. We know that's not true. And yes, athleticism and power, of which Lewis has plenty, certainly plays a role in shortening the learning curve of MMA. But if it were just as simple as being athletic and throwing a hard punch, Greg Hardy would be a contender. He's not, but Lewis is. Lewis has been a fixture atop the UFC heavyweight rankings for years. After beating Alexander Volkov at UFC 229, he had won 9 of his last 10 fights, setting him up to challenge Daniel Cormier for the title. He lost the fight, but of course there's no shame in losing to Cormier. Since then, he's won 4 of his last 5 fights and is again in position to challenge for the title. Contrary to what we may often believe, and what Lewis himself often plays up, he's not a meme. He's a legitimate contender. But how? In my opinion, it boils down to 2 factors: talent and coachability. Lewis has natural talent. How often do you see a man of his size throwing switch kicks as effortlessly as this? And in spite of having no grappling background, he's taken down guys with legitimate credentials. And for someone with supposedly zero grappling ability, he's lost by submission just once, and that was to an all-time great in Cormier. We can make all the memes we want about how funny it looks when Lewis just stands up when his opponent is in a dominant position, often giving up his back in the process. But it doesn't matter if it works. The second factor that makes Lewis so dangerous is coachability. Every fighter is unique, and what a good coach does is not to try to fit them into a mold, but rather to try to help them become the best fighter they can be with the abilities they have. Derrick Lewis has some very clear strengths and weaknesses, and what a good coach does is to factor in all of this and try to develop a blueprint for him to win based on it. But that's just one side of the equation. The fighter has to actually be receptive to this blueprint and implement it effectively, and this is where Derrick Lewis stands out. He doesn't fight like a dummy. Remember when Marvin Vettori fought Israel Adesanya the second time and Rafael Cordeiro kept telling him in between rounds that Adesanya was winning?
He's winning the fight by touch, by claw.
And that Vettori would have to be more aggressive.
You have to be more aggressive. If you want to be champ, you have to be the first.
And then after the fight, Giga Chikadze said the fight should have been scored in favor of Vettori. And then Vettori said that Chikadze is one of the few that understand striking, essentially implying that Rafael Cordeiro doesn't understand striking. This is the type of behavior we would just never see from Lewis. He fights in a way that maximizes his chances of winning and is very much cognizant of his shortcomings, which is more uncommon than you may think. Look at his most recent fight, for example. We laugh about it, but Lewis had the perfect Lewis performance. Blaydes was dictating the pace of the fight in the first round in spite of not having attempted any serious takedown attempts. But Lewis's supposed passivity had a purpose to it. He wanted Blaydes to get comfortable.
Look, see, Lewis knows. He's waiting for it. It's going to be an uppercut when he comes in.
He was waiting for that inevitable entry, which of course eventually came in the second round. Blaydes shoots in for a double leg and Lewis lands a perfectly timed uppercut that shuts the lights out.
That was the only punch I was waiting for the whole fight. So I knew he was going to come in, either the uppercut or the knee was going to land. So that's all I was waiting on. I didn't care about throwing a 1-2, a jab, or anything.
Well, listen.
I like them wrestlers.
Once again, I'm not surprised after tonight.
Lewis, being someone who cuts weight to make the 265 pounds weight limit, generally likes to preserve his energy as much as he can. One exception to this, however, was against Mark Hunt. He threw a lot of fancy kicks throughout this fight and tired himself out, and in fact threw a switch knee before resting his arms on his waist, inviting Hunt to go for the kill and get the finish. Lewis was completely exhausted by this point, but against someone with Hunt's kickboxing credentials, you can understand why Lewis tried to be more active. Generally speaking, however, Lewis is very efficient with his energy usage, which is important for a big guy who puts everything into his punches. As to how a man of his size is even able to throw these types of kicks to begin with, his physique may not look like it, but Lewis is a tremendous athlete. He's surprisingly explosive, which again fits right into his blueprint for winning. It's not a coincidence that oftentimes he's losing a fight until he wins it. That's not luck, that's by design. If he manages to get this interim belt and set himself up for a rematch with Francis Ngannou, it will be very interesting to see how things turn out.
Fuck Francis.
And as much as I'm unapologetically an Ngannou fanboy, I cannot deny that Derrick Lewis becoming the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion would be the best timeline.
I don't stay in the gym all day like just about all my opponents do. You know, I stay probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and 5 minutes on my phone posting news.